Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining. We're going to give it just a few more minutes before we get started. In the meantime, if you wouldn't mind filling out this poll question, it's a little bit different than the last few polls that we've had. You can text 49395 and then your answer to the number 22333, and those instructions are right there on that slide for you. Like I said, we'll get started in just a few minutes. Thanks. All right, if you haven't had a chance to fill out that poll question yet, please do so as soon as you can. It's a little different than our last few polls, but pretty simple. You can submit multiple answers as well if you would like. It's an emotion-based poll question, so if there are a few different emotions that you're having, feel free to definitely submit multiple answers there. But we're going to go ahead and get started as a few more people join. My name is Callie, and I do the marketing and communications at GoodellNet. I just wanted to thank you all for joining today. This is the third installment of Thrive Not Survive, and we're going to cover remote employee management today. We do hope that this webinar helps you get the most out of your team and understand how to use the tools that you have to your benefit. So I'm going to remind you all now that this webinar is recorded. We're going to send out the recording to all of you later on this afternoon. And we'll also go ahead and attach the previous link or the links to the previous webinars in this series to that email. If you have any questions, we would love to hear those. If you could just post them to the Q&A here, we'll address them all at the end of the webinar. So I believe that's all the housekeeping that I have. I'll go ahead and kick it over to Derek so we can get started.
Thanks, Callie. So good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're at. I appreciate you joining us today for our third installment of our Thrive Not Survive webinar series on managing remote employees. Couple quick things. Like I said, make sure you get your poll questions and we'll go review those answers here in just a minute. But for those of you who haven't joined one of our series so far, my name is Derek Watson. I'm the director of the Microsoft Solutions practice here at GoodellNet. Our headquarters and where I'm based out of is here in St. Louis, Missouri. My background is over 20 years in IT consulting for a lot of major key accounts here, as well as doing some consulting for a lot of smaller places as well. And my passions are emerging technology, productivity, and building technology community. Like Callie said, if you missed any of our other sessions in this series, feel free to go back to our YouTube channel under GoodellNet, and you can find those sessions there. Let's check the results for our poll real quick. So in a single word, name the emotion or feeling that best describes you this week. So we're actually going to talk a little about this stuff in the session today. So I want to kind of get a finger on the pulse of where people were and kind of some of the emotions and feelings that they were having. So it looks like some of the things that we're seeing, and again, this is not that uncommon, anxiety, loneliness, frustration, optimistic. That's a good one as well. I think I kind of fall into that category. Uncertainty, angry, positive. So a lot of different feelings, but again, one of the sub themes for this week is, again, how people are, how we manage our employees, and one of those things is making sure that we check in on their mental health and their current mental state. So thanks everybody for submitting your poll answers. Switch back over to the presentation here. So for today, we're going to be discussing the challenges that arise when working remotely, and especially with kind of a focus on, again, from a lens of a manager and their direct report. After that, we'll talk about some strategies for managing the remote employees and addressing some of those challenges. And then last, we'll talk about Office 365 tools that can kind of help you practically implement those strategies and, again, addressing those challenges. And then last, we'll save some time for Q&A so you guys can bring all your questions and we can discuss those at that point. Let's talk about our challenges. These challenges were brought to us, again, these have kind of been aggregated amongst our customers and just the general sentiment as I check in on the projects that I'm on. Just want to get a feeling for where everybody's at. And these are kind of the common themes. We've kind of lumped them into 3 buckets. And those buckets are communication disruption, some of the effects of self-isolation, and then the last one being lack of visibility, and which in turn can create a lack of trust. So talking about communication disruption, when we do a quick pivot to a remote work model, a lot of behaviors and habits are forced to change very quickly. So people that are used to either just popping over the cubicle to chat with somebody, or meeting up with coworkers in the break room, or expecting a hallway encounter, they just don't have those luxuries anymore. Routine conversations, they have to be more intentional, they have to be more scheduled. Sometimes that can make those conversations more awkward, or can promote like animosity in those conversations. So a lot of workers are turning to more digital means of communications, whether it be email, instant messaging, and text. And if they, number one, if they haven't done that in the past, or that's not a commonplace thing for them, or if notifications aren't configured properly, or they don't monitor it directly, then sometimes unanswered messages and lack of communication, or disjointed communication, can cause slow progress and frustrate their teammates. And then lastly is around communication disruption is really the introduction of distractions. So again, we have many more distractions that we had in the office. When you're in the office, you have a much more controlled environment. You do have distractions, but again, it's expected. You've been doing that for many, many years. But now that when you come home, and again, on top of that, everybody else is forced to remain at home as well, including your spouses and children, this can increase the chance of being disrupted exponentially. The second bucket is kind of the effects of self-isolation. So again, I think a lot of people would agree, especially based upon the feedback on the poll question, that there are definitely some effects of isolation being experienced. And there's really kind of 2 big buckets there. There's the physical effects and the mental effects. So physical effects, I mean, as an outcome of being isolated, I think people are maybe stopped going to the gym. They may not eat as properly as they did, or hopefully they are, but maybe they're not. That can lead to other physical effects, like fatigue or headaches for staring at a screen all day. Poor ergonomics, again, and maybe you don't have a very good, comfortable workspace. So again, you're getting back issues, or you're not feeling as good as you could there. And all these things can kind of add up to other things as well, like insomnia, like again, lack of sleep, because again, maybe you're having weird work patterns, or you're having too much blue light exposure. And then we can also talk about the mental side of things as well. Obviously, there's definitely documented effects of self-isolation, whether it be loneliness, or depression, or anxiety, or fear, or anger, or stress. All these things, again, can happen whenever you're in more than that, just be amplified whenever you're in self-isolation. So these are just things to be aware of. Again, I know most of the people on this call have probably experienced it, especially in some form or another, and I can guarantee that your direct reports are also experiencing it as well. And then the last one was a common theme as well, which is, again, the perceived lack of visibility can also, especially if you don't have a really good, healthy employee manager relationship, can also breed a lack of trust. And again, just a concern there around how do I make sure that my employees are really getting the most out of their time. So a lot of supervisors, they rely on workplace encounters as a means of tracking productivity and dedication. So again, if I can see them working, if I can see them at their desk or with their heads down, there's the implication that they're actually getting work done and that they're doing their tasks. But we don't have that luxury anymore. So again, One of the challenges there is how are we able to keep tabs on our employees and monitor their productivity without being too heavy-handed or, again, pushing them away. So again, those are the three key kind of challenge areas that we've identified, and again, based upon our customers bringing their concerns to the table. So for the strategies, I just want to give a quick shout out to the members of the GoodellNet leadership team for sharing their feedback. Joe, Jen, Brad, and Nick gave us fantastic insights and practical, kind of tips and tricks to help us build out these strategies for managing remote employees. And again, throughout these suggestions, all of these things are things that we have implemented at GoodellNet in some form or another. So I think the key strategy, or one of the most important strategies here, is really defining expectations. And again, this is something that's great even without pandemic times. If you're going to a working from home model, on the front end of it, define what those expectations are. So again, what are your rules of the road? Now, your rules of the road may differ from another organization. Again, you may have different work hours. You may have different, again, focused time or meeting requirements. So again, that could vary by company to company, but at the very basic level, have a conversation on what are the common working hours? When are the times that I should be available and ready to work on a project or on a task? And then after that, what are the preferred communication channels? So again, we have all these tools and capabilities at our disposal, whether it be email or a Teams message or instant messaging or a text or a call. But what we don't have at our disposal is just a casual drop by or walk up. So again, spend a little bit of time in thinking about, again, how you prefer to be communicated with, and also your direct reports understand how they prefer to be communicated with, and come up with a model that works for everybody. It doesn't have to be super formal, but again, once you do that, then you can talk about, now that we've established what those kind of primary communication channels are, let's talk about the response times or the SLAs that we should have around those communication channels. So, for example, it may be an unwritten rule, but for me, I feel like I whenever I get an email, I provide a 24-hour response. If nothing more than just say, hey, I got your email, I'm addressing this question. And maybe there's a different response level for like a Teams post. Maybe that's a little bit less. Maybe it's like an 8-hour response window. And then maybe an instant message is a little bit more higher priority than that. Maybe that's like a 1-hour response type situation. And then again, in an emergency, maybe a text or a phone call that deserves an immediate response. So these are just guidelines or suggestions. Again, one size does not fit all, but think about how you work and what your expectations are of your customers and your employees, and help come up with a plan. Because again, if you can just come up with a singular plan that everybody can follow, then at least we know what those rules of the road are, and we can adhere to those. The second key strategy was continued focus on employee development. So again, a lot of our customers, as well as GoodellNet, really prides ourselves on our employee development process and then how much time and energy we put into our culture. So again, if you don't have them, definitely create SMART goals for your employees. So just a reminder, SMART goals are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. And again, there's tons of guides out there and worksheets on how to do that if you haven't done that before. But again, a lot of our customers do that. But the key here is, again, don't let those things go by the wayside. Don't put a pause on those things. Make sure you're investing those. Continue to invest the time on goal development and also tracking. And again, the second one being tracking those goals and providing accountability. So make sure you're tracking progress towards those goals and providing accountability and making sure that they're both able to get their goals accomplished and providing support along the way. And one way you can provide support is really trying to break down those goals, those larger goals, maybe those annual goals or semi-annual goals, into smaller pieces. So again, we tend to think about, for us, we try to break them down into either weekly goals or even daily goals. But that allows you to track and have conversations around things on a much more frequent basis. So that, again, helping you solve that problem of lack of visibility or lack of accountability on the task level for the employee by breaking those things down into smaller chunks and talking about them more. Another one is, another big one was focused on behavior management instead of outcomes. So this was an interesting concept that was brought up, but if you think about it, again, there's a lot of goals that we're not going to be able to achieve based upon the current situation by no fault of our own, whether it be a sales goal or just again a target that we want to hit. So again, those things are out of our control, and sometimes when things are out of our control, it causes all those negative emotions to come up. So one thing that we can do is we can make sure that we are focusing on the behaviors that will provide us with success. So for example, if it's a sales goal and if we don't hit our sales targets, then let's talk about our key behaviors that help drive us towards those sales targets. Things like the number of customer touches per week, the number of webinars we put on, our social media exposure, our business partnership activities, all those activities. Let's make sure that we're still investing the proper amount of time and energy and quality into those things, and that will help us from again for the future negative impacts of this kind of downturn that we're going through right now. And then lastly, one of the key pieces of feedback that we got was celebrate wins, and not just celebrate wins because we do a really good job of that at GoodellNet, but also just put more emphasis on it now more than ever. Make sure they're celebrated more clearly, more vocally, more people see that. Because again, it's one of those things that people need that now more than ever. They need that support, they need that positivity. So again, make sure that you're adequately celebrating all the wins that you're achieving right now. Our third strategy is change how you think about meetings. Again, we've talked a lot about meetings in this webinar series. We've talked about just how to hold online meetings, and we've talked about meeting etiquette, and I heavily encourage you to go back and watch those webinars. But some of these things are going to be kind of repeated information, but there's some other things that we just kind of get more specific with. So firstly, we've talked about this in some of our other sessions, is embrace a video-first meeting culture. So again, because of the lack of face-to-face interaction, it really helps with accountability and encourages people to pay attention when you have a video-first meeting culture, when you're able to see the person on the other end. It also helps combat, even if subconsciously, the more negative effects of self-isolation. So again, seeing people's faces, seeing emotion, seeing nuance, it really does help. And again, I've experienced this firsthand in a lot of our calls. And then lastly, it brings back some of the subtlety of those face-to-face conversations, some of the nuance that we've missed out on. So it helps with the conversation. And again, it doesn't become, it really tries to put a stop to some of those more negative emotions we feel. The second point here is to really challenge yourself to schedule less of those 60-minute meetings and more of those 15-minute meetings. So again, have more short, impactful meetings with your direct reports and your employees. Again, more regular, repetitive contact, and that can really help combat those negative effects of isolation. And ultimately, again, it's just going to enhance better communication channels and really strengthen again some of these topics that we're going to be talking about today. Thirdly is incorporate daily stand-up meetings. So this is a very practical way to address the issue again of how do we manage our remote employees' tasks? How do we keep up to date on what's going on? How do we have visibility? If nothing else, just create a daily stand-up meeting. It doesn't have to be very long. It could be 5 to 15 minutes. But again, check in on things like, what did you complete yesterday? What needs to be worked on today? What are the potential issues you may have today, and what can I do to help? What barriers can I knock down? Having those quick questions every day, even if it's just I got this done, I'm working on this today. Nope, I don't need any help. 5 minutes, at least. Again, it reinforces that contact. It reinforces that communication, and again, make sure that everybody's on the same page. And then ultimately, also, if you can add on the next level of that is how are you tracking things towards your weekly goals? So again, I've these 3 things that I wanted to get done this week. How are you doing with that? How's your progress going on those things? How can I help you get those done? And lastly, and again, those daily stand-up meetings they're a form of one-on-one, but when you have targeted one-on-one meetings with your direct reports, one of the key pieces of feedback from multiple leaders was start checking in on a personal level, even to the degree of talking about emotions first out of the gate. And even more specifically, have the employees name the emotion and speak to it actively. If you can start having those level of conversations with your employees, if they can name their feelings and kind of address how they're feeling, it's a huge step forward in be able to again address some of the fear, anxiety, uncertainty aspects of the state of the world that we're in right now. Again, if you think about it, this is how we raise our children. As they get older and kind of come online, we talk to them and help them, vocalize their feelings and emotions. But even as adults, we still need that to this day, especially in a time like this. And then secondarily, again, use those one-on-ones more as a mental health check-in, just as much as an operational function. So again, connecting on a personal level, talking about emotions, but just check in on people, make sure that they're okay. Just because you didn't get to those 3 bullet points you wanted to get to, again, in times like this, especially if it's a temporary time, those mental health check-ins were going to pay huge dividends in the long run. Another key strategy that we've kind of experienced is embracing video for top-down communication. So everybody's used to those mass emails getting sent out to the company, and again, arguably now we're seeing a lot more mass emails, whether it be office policy related, or this is what's going on with the state of the company, or what have you. Some of them are positive, some of them are negative, but again, we're having a lot more top-down conversations with our employees. And again, there's a lot of an email can be very impersonal especially for delivering important information or complex or even emotional information. So again, with video, that message you receive is much more personal. We can even talk about project wins or new hires or even positive things as well. But when you're on a video conversation, again, it's going to help alleviate those stresses, those anxieties, those fears, and it's also going to help feel a connection to the top level in the leadership in the organization. Again, a picture down there in the bottom is our own Nick Morelli delivering kind of a message to us. A quick message. It doesn't be long. It can be 5-10 minutes. But again, usually you can capture the same amount of information in a quick video message, and again, it's much more personal. We talked about this a little bit in an earlier bullet point, but again, emotion, passion, and other nuance comes across. So again, when you can see if the message is around, hey, we've just lost this key account, you can see the hurt, you can see or if it's a project when you can see the passion. Again, those things come across, and again, helps kind of solidify that human contact that people have been missing. And then lastly, employees appreciate the effort. Again, it takes a little bit of time to record those videos. Arguably, it may take the same or less or more time than just typing all the information out. But employees do appreciate the effort, and they appreciate the willingness for people to kind of reach out and make themselves more vulnerable and put themselves on display for the rest of the organization. Then one of our last key strategies, and again, this was something that came up with a lot of our feedback, was really to focus on a healthy work-life balance and PTO in vacation time, and now more than ever. It seems like, again, all these days run together. It seems like, there's Monday through Monday, and even to the point last week where people were scheduling meetings on Memorial Day, and I said, hey, I think we still get this as a holiday. I don't know, and so things like that. Remember to encourage that healthy work-life balance for your employees. One of the ways you can do that is be flexible. We did an informal poll of Goodell.net employees, and we talked about, how do you feel about your productivity level being inside or outside of the office? And we would argue, and based on that poll, a lot of them said, we feel like we're as productive or more productive outside the office. And that may not be the case with your staff, but if for some reason they're not being as productive, or there's a perception of there, again, just be understanding and flexible when you're dealing with them, because again, we don't know their situation. Again, now we've taken on the additional role of being teachers or daycare, or again, a lot of other things, primary breadwinners that maybe those roles weren't established prior to this pandemic. So we just need to make sure we take care of those employees and help them deal with those challenges, and be flexible and allow them to do those things. And the second bullet point kind of piggybacks off that. Again, support those employees that are supporting their families. You know, if a kid hops on a lap during a video call, you know, it's not a really big deal. Again, in our previous episodes around etiquette, we talk about some ways that you can prep for, especially for more important meetings or more official meetings. But again, just be understanding. I think everybody's kind of all the people that I've experienced, all the customers I've experienced have been very understanding when a little one, you know, walks in behind you or has a chat. But yeah, again, if an employee needs to drop off and spend 30 minutes to help with some math homework, or needs to run somebody out to the store to get something, again, just be understanding and supportive. And then lastly, again, can't stress this enough, encourage employees to use vacation and ultimately take some yourself. So again, you know, the concept of vacation, especially leaving your own house, seems very foreign, even only after 2 months, especially when all the days blur together. But again, we need to make sure that our staff are taking much needed mental breaks in the form of vacations or just getting away from the office or getting outside of the day-to-day cycle. But to support that, you really have to lead by example. You have to make sure that you are taking those breaks, because again, everybody can feel the weight of pressure of the, you know, the economy and on all these things on themselves. But you really have to show them that it's okay. It's okay to take some time off. Yeah, you're busy, but it's okay to take a little bit of a break. It's okay to focus on your mental health a little bit. So that kind of wraps up our strategy section. Again, great feedback from all the different leaders here at GoodellNet. But I want to spend a few minutes to talk about the tools that we have in Office 365 to kind of help you practically apply some of these things that we talked about and really address some of these concerns. So again, I put some of my favorites on there. There's obviously a lot of other areas and a lot of other tools that we can use, but specifically, we talk a lot about video conferencing with presentation or communication, whether it be instant messaging, chat, or phone. And again, Microsoft Teams is that platform for us that we use to make sure it makes all those things happen. Another big thing is the concept of presence indicator. So again, I'm green, I'm available. I'm yellow, I'm away. I'm red, I'm in a meeting. I'm red with a line through it. Do not disturb. I'm presenting. Understanding what those presence indicators are, and then again incorporating them into how you communicate with your employees. So again, if I'm online and I see that my direct report has been away all day, I might want to have a conversation in the next stand-up meeting and say, hey, I saw you were all away all day. Is everything okay? You know, just checking in. And they may say, oh yeah, I had to run out for the day or had a doctor appointment or something like that. But again, using those as tools to kind of help, but also using that as well as to for those rules of the road to understand when you should communicate with somebody. So again, if I see somebody's away on Teams, I should not expect an instant response in an instant message. So just layering that presence indication onto your current processes and how you're doing things. The second one is Microsoft Stream. So Microsoft Stream, if you're not familiar with it, is kind of like YouTube for your corporate environment. So again, it allows you to publish video messages. And again, a simple way to create those video messages is to create a Teams meeting for yourself, hit the record button, and those automatically get published to Stream. So that's how we do it. And you saw the example earlier, but Microsoft Stream is a great way to publish internal content, and you can share those videos and everybody can consume them. The third thing is Microsoft Planner. So again, if we're talking about either lightweight project management or task management, Microsoft Planner provides a great interface and capability to do that. So if you're struggling, especially maybe you have a formal project management system for your clients or your projects, but you're lacking in how you handle internal things or tasks like that, Planner is a great way to fill that gap and be able to provide a place to have visibility, to provide accountability, and have the details around each one of those tasks, and again, status updates and tracking that as long through the process. Next is Microsoft To Do. So hand in hand with Microsoft Planner, Microsoft To Do is a great personal to-do and list management tool. So Microsoft To Do can actually roll up all of your tasks from Microsoft Planner, but it can do so much more. It can roll up, again, your flagged emails or priority emails from your inbox. It can hold your ad hoc to-do list items, as well as just list information in general. So again, a great supplemental tool to help you kind of manage that. And again, for employees to be able to keep that stuff in the cloud It goes across devices. You can have a mobile application as well as on your desktop too. And lastly, one of my favorite things is Microsoft OneNote. So again, if you're not familiar with Microsoft OneNote, it's a tool for personal or shared notebooks, but it's fantastic. And again, it's free form, it's organic, it's searchable. But again, using that to support projects, one-on-ones, meeting notes, call notes, everything. OneNote is my backup brain, and it's really a great tool. And especially as we're going more digital, it is multi-platform, just like To Do. So again, a great tool to help support some of these processes and things that we're promoting going forward. So those are just a subsection of all the Office 365 tools that can help you out. Obviously, things like Power BI to get visualization around call information or task information or project information, or again, Power Apps to incorporate into, again, we're building out a Power App to be able to do a health screen of our employees when they come back into the office. They can fill out, and we have a receipt of everybody that's in the office, so they took their temperature, they've answered all these questions. So again, there's tons of different tools in the Office 365 suite that can help you out. If you have any questions about that, we'll switch over to the next slide, which is, again, we power our clients' missions. So how can we do that? Through digital transformation. So reach out to me. I'd love to talk about this stuff and talk about how we can help you, again, apply these principles and especially using these Office 365 tools. A lot of these things, it's just a matter of using them out of the box and kind of putting those different tools together and making sure that they are supporting your processes that you have in place today. So with that, we'll turn it over to Callie for question and answer, and we can talk through some of your guys' questions.
All right, sounds great. We have about 3 questions right now. The first one is, sometimes my presence indication changes to red when I'm not unavailable. Why does it do that, and how can I stop it from changing from green? I assume that would be Microsoft Teams.
Sure.
Microsoft Teams, yep.
No, that's a good question. So again, presence indication has been around for a while, and again, it was in Skype as well as Teams. So depending on whether you're on Skype and Teams, it's pretty much the same answer. But more so in Teams, that presence indicator used to be a very manual thing. You used to have to tell it, yes, I'm green, so I would set it as green, or yes, I'm red, I set it with red. But nowadays, especially with a lot of the intelligence built into the Office 365 platform, the presence indicator will automatically change depending on your activity. So for example, right now, my presence indicator for my local Teams environment is set to do not disturb because I'm presenting to you guys. Once I end this meeting, then it will go back to being green or yellow, depending on whether I stick around at my desk. If you're away from your computer for a few minutes, I believe 10 to 15 minutes, or whenever it goes to sleep, then yes, it will switch over to away. But ultimately, I think the nature behind this question is switching from green to red. And typically what that's looking at is your Outlook calendar. So if you have anything on your Outlook calendar, especially something that is actually not declared as free time, that will automatically just say red, meaning busy. So it's an interesting thing because you can actually utilize that to help provide more focus and clarity around your work. So for example, if I need to spend 4 hours today doing a debrief after this webinar, for example, I can schedule a meeting on my calendar and it will automatically go to red. So people will know that, hey, he's busy at the moment. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they can't be contacted, but it just gives them kind of the first layer of, yeah, they're probably busy, they probably won't respond right away, or just sets that expectation. Good question.
Yeah, it was a great question. Our next question is, how can I approach changing my remote management style to be more proactive at this stage in the pandemic?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think probably a lot of people feel the same way. I would say first and foremost, it's never too late to change your style. And again, don't put too much thought process behind it. It's every minute matters, especially in some of these situations. So again, some things you can kind of do just to get started, just in the short term. Again, we talked about having those stand-up meetings. Again, that's a way to really very quickly help provide visibility into tasks, help provide accountability, and help the employees feel like they're supported. Again, if you approach it from a standpoint of how can I help you achieve your goals, how can I help you achieve these tasks? What are your barriers? What things can I knock down for you? So those in the short term, those are great things to get done. But yeah, there's no reason you can't apply these things right now. And honestly, going forward, depending upon what kind of hybrid work model you have, or even go straight back to the office, again, you will not be in a worse place by implementing these strategies.
Thank you. It looks like we have one last question. How do I keep my team from feeling isolated?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Again, we talked a lot about different strategies. That was kind of a common theme here is really to combat the negative effects of self-isolation. We've talked about this in some of the other webinars as well, as far as more so than just, again, constant contact, personal connections, understanding, doing mental health checks. But more so than that, again, we've talked about this we've given this tip before about having, again, virtual happy hours, or again, virtual team building events. Yeah, those are ways that you can really help combat those things. But ultimately, I think, again, going back to what we talked about in this presentation, the constant, quick touch points, personal touch points, was really that common approach that a lot of our leadership teams takes to really help with that keeping that communication channel open and really making sure that the employees' well-being is taken care of.
We haven't had any other questions come through, so I guess we're ready to wrap it up.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining today. Like Callie said, we will be publishing this content out later today. And if you have missed the previous sessions, feel free to go back out to our YouTube channel, search for GoodLNet, and you'll be able to find the rest of the series. Thanks again for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.